It is Wednesday, and you all know what that means. It's time for another episode of the Life in the Movies podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Ryan Kim. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This week, Jacob and I are going to be doing a deep dive on Thor, Love and Thunder, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything in between. We're also going to be talking about things we've been watching lately, and we'll also be reviewing Season 1, Episode 2 of Jessica Jones. A lot of stuff to cover, but first I have to introduce my co-host, Jacob Martin. Jacob, how are you doing, good sir?
I am doing good, Ryan. It's been a really good week. I've watched some interesting stuff. I'm excited to talk about Thor on the podcast with you. That's a movie people are talking about for better or worse. Some really liked it, others didn't. I'm excited to talk about the movie and where we fall on this movie. I know we have varying opinions on these types of movies, and I'm excited to dive into the discussion in a pretty respectful manner.
Yeah, I agree. And I should get out in front of this and say that we will be talking about this in a spoiler-filled section and a spoiler-free section. I know that there will be some of the people listening who probably have not seen the movie yet, and so out of respect for them, I think it is wise to divide it into a spoiler-free and filled section. However brief the spoiler-free section actually is, but just for the respect of those who have not seen the movie yet. But in terms of life stuff, Jacob, anything new? Because a lot of interesting stuff has been happening on my end.
I think things have been about the same over on my end. There might be some possible job developments, but I don't want to dive into that until things actually happen, may or may not happen. So I don't want to dive into that just yet. But as of now, things have been pretty much where they normally are. What's going on your end?
Well, in terms of YouTube things, there's been a lot of activity. We've got something coming up later on this week, which...
Oh man, I'm glad. I'm actually almost forgot to mention that the Discussing DreamWorks podcast, which this will be Wednesday when the this podcast drops. It's going to be a live stream type podcast. It's going to be Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. The Discussing DreamWorks podcast. We're going to be talking about Ants, DreamWorks' first ever animated movie from 1998. And I know, Ryan, you messaged me saying you hadn't seen the film in a while and it was weirder than you remember. I'm sure we're going to have a really good discussion about this movie.
Yeah, part of me was kind of guilty. I was messaging you so much, but some of the crap that was in that movie was just so out of bounds. I was just like, there is a head on the ground and it is talking, and it is the voice of Danny Glover. What acid trip am I in? What genjutsu am I in right now? But that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's going to be a lot of fun on Thursday. It's over on Jacob's channel. Please be sure to go and subscribe. It will be linked in the description. Please do check that out. But in terms of other YouTube-related stuff, just a couple of plugs. I had the great honor of being a part of the Fifth Dimension podcast, of being a guest on there. It's a Twilight Zone podcast, and we discussed in depth the episode called The Howling Man, which is one of my personal favorites. It's over on the Movie Emporium channel. I retweeted it on Twitter, so hopefully you all will see it there, but I will put it in the eye in the right-hand corner or in the description somewhere. I highly recommend that you check that out. It was a great time I had with Nick, with Triv, and with another Jacob Anders. So that was a lot of fun. And also, it was recently announced that I'm going to be a part of some movie trivia. I'm in the Top Notch Trivia League that's over on Ryan O'Toole's channel, another Ryan. My first matchup is actually coming up this week. I am not sure when. It's looking like it's going to be this weekend. I'm going to be facing Alyssa from Mainly Movies, and that's going to be a lot of fun. I haven't stepped into a trivia arena in about a minute, but it's going to be so much fun. I am really looking forward to a win, lose, or draw. And another trivia thing is actually brewing, but I don't want to make any announcements right at this minute. It's a very good thing. I'm excited to share it with you all, but I want them to share it first, and then I will broach it here. I don't want to jump the gun, so to speak. And I don't want to hog all the airtime. I'm just so very excited because none of this used to happen to me before. So when like I approach people and they're like, "Yeah, sure, we'd love to have you on," or in this case, they approach me. It's so weird, but it's so awesome, and I hope I'm not overshadowing you, Jacob, or anything. That's not my intention in
No,
the slightest.
no,
So
it's really cool that you're doing all this fun stuff, and I'm happy for you. And I'm definitely gonna be cheering you on.
yeah, the Top Notch Trivia will be on Ryan O'Toole's channel. I will be sharing it on my social media, on Twitter, at RyanCam20. I'll tell you all about it. If you are interested, please go check me out over on Ryan O'Toole's channel. It's going to be a great time. So with all of that grandstanding and hot dogging out of the way, let's get into some stuff we've been watching lately. So Jacob, what have you been watching lately?
One movie I've been watching. Let's see, let me check real quick. TV show that I'm continuing and watching for the first time, continuing in my Downton Abbey. I'm gonna sum up episodes 3 and 4 together real quick. I'm still enjoying this series awfully well. Episode 3 went into some dark places I didn't expect to see because that's the one with the Turkish guy Pamuk, and he goes to
Oh
Downton
yeah,
Abbey.
I
And
forgot about that. Yeah, that has ripple effects throughout the rest of the show. I will say no more, but
which
it's
I'm starting to feel that continuing on, especially in regards to the Mary character. And I was not expecting it to go there. I'm not gonna say what it is because that was a big shock to me. So I figured if it was a big shock to me, I want other people to be just as shocked by it as well. So I'm not saying what happens to this character, but it went in places I was not expecting. And I think of the episodes I've seen so far, that one might be the best because it shocked me. And it was that well done of an episode. Episode 4, I thought was pretty good too. It continues why I can't stand the Thomas character so much. Because here you have a character who's bitter towards the other footman in his job, and he's pretending, despite the fact that he's gay, to court around with the Daisy character just to spite another guy. I'm like, come on now, that's the pettiest thing you could ever do. And I still cannot stand this character all the same. That one was a pretty good episode too. Some stories in that episode weren't as interesting, like the one with Mrs. Hughes and the old flame. I'm like, I don't care about that. I want to focus on the characters I'm actually enjoying. And that was an enjoyable episode. It just Thomas is a character. I think Ryan, you told me he gets more likable as the series goes along. So
yeah.
far, I'm not feeling it. I cannot stand Thomas.
I understand. Just give it time. He becomes far more tolerable, especially when more incorrigible people enter the equation. He gets more and more likable almost by default. But yeah, that's interesting that you point out the fact that Thomas is actually gay. I'm not surprised, but I'm actually like I guess I'm a bit surprised that you picked up on that so quick. Because it took it. I actually figured out. Oh yeah, clearly it's this. But I'm I'm surprised that you picked up on that.
Well, it was kind of obvious because, in the first episode, he did have like a little fling with Charlie Cox.
Yeah, that was a bit of a dead giveaway,
Yeah.
and it's definitely something that clearly affects him because I mean stuff like that just was not a thing back then. It was pretty much the most taboo of the taboo if you really think about it.
Yeah.
And so trust me when I say that Thomas, you're going to start out not liking him, and clearly you don't. But by the end of the show, he does turn around and he becomes legitimately a really good person. That's
And let
all
me
I.
preface, it's not the fact that Thomas is gay is the
Oh
reason
no,
why
no,
I
no,
don't
no.
like this character. It's the actions that he does to other
Yeah,
characters is why I cannot stand the character.
yeah. He plays politics. He's a crapster. He's a line stepper. That's the reason why he is unlikable. But like I said, give it time. He does get better. And now that you bring up Now that you bring up the Turkish thing, like I said, uh, because the Grantham name kind of gets thrown through the ringer throughout the entire show. It's like pounded into your head that this name is very famous. It's tied with prestige and money and all of that. And I'm not going to say it's totally destroyed, but it's definitely put to the test. It's one of the main themes of the show is as the years progress, because the movie starts out days after the Titanic sinking in 1912 through World War One up to like the start of the 20s, maybe like the Roaring 20s. So one of the main themes of the show is just very old time fashion, like Grantham ways going up against the wheels of time. And so that's one of the things that I personally find most interesting.
And I'm starting to feel that as we go along, because one of the plots in episode 4 involves one of the daughters hanging out with the new chauffeur, who's a politically driven man, and she's invested in the like some of the growing like women's rights movement and stuff. And at the end of the episode, instead of wearing the traditional dress, she's actually wearing pants. That's kind of like a fashion statement. So I can definitely see what you're saying about like the traditions of the family and the continued progress of time that keeps kind of clashing, I guess. It's interesting seeing like the historical context presented in Downton Abbey and doing it in such a really investing way. I'm actually more and more I'm watching Downton Abbey, the more I'm surprised at how good this show actually is.
What'd you think of Bates and that whole leg brace thing? Wasn't that the most painful thing
Oh,
you've ever
that
seen?
I wanted him to get rid of that as soon as he got. I'm like, come on, Bates. This is not 2022 when the technology is better to where you can help treat something like that. You're in 1912. That leg brace ain't gonna do you no good.
Yeah, it's pretty much an albatross, and one of the most satisfying things in the whole show is when Bates and Mrs. Hughes just like throw the damn thing into the river. You're
Yep.
like, yes, thank God. Is Bates is like one of my favorite characters in this whole show. He goes through so much and he just keeps his dignity throughout. And I will say no more because it's worth it just to see what happens, especially in later years. But I'm so glad you're into Downton Abbey now. It's
Yeah,
I've
I
I've
was.
conver- I've converted someone. Rachel
Yeah,
converted me, and now I've
you were
converted
one
you.
of two people that got me excited to check out Downton Abbey. So major props there.
Anyway, what else you got?
All right, another one I checked out. Of course, we'll share our thoughts on Thor: Love and Thunder in a little bit. But another movie I checked out. This is a new release. It's on Netflix. It's a movie called The Sea Beast. I checked this out this past weekend. It's again a movie you can check out on Netflix. It's directed by Chris Williams, who previously worked at Disney, co-directing movies such as Bolt and Moana. This is the first solo project he's done as a director, working at Netflix. Really good story. You have these sea hunters who are going out in the sea, taking down these sea monsters. And then you have this little girl who stows aboard the main ship, ends up bonding with one of the crew members, a character who's voiced by Carl Urban. And they get separated from the main ship and they end up befriending one of the sea monsters. And the movie is pretty much predictable at times. Like when you realize the movie's about sea monsters and hunters going after sea monsters, you kind of know where the story's going to go. And it's like this big epic battle between man and beast and the unlikely hero trying to challenge like the big worldview of what's going on. It's pretty similar in a lot of ways to How to Train Your Dragon. Even the main sea beast, this red creature thing, had despite the fact that the character's red, did look a little similar to Toothless for my liking. But the movie's still a lot of fun. The movie's actually a little darker than most animated movies. It's actually pretty violent at times, and I actually welcome and respect that. The action scenes in this movie and the visual effects alone and the animation are worth watching because it's really fun seeing these like sea adventures in animation formats. The voice cast is really good, especially Carl Urban as our main character. The little girl who stows aboard could have been really annoying, but I actually did really like her personality. And her and Carl Urban actually do have an amazing bond together that I did enjoy awfully well. I did enjoy the adventure. Even though the story is a little predictable, it's still a really well done story that I was invested in from start to finish. Maybe not the best movie of the year or anything, but it's still a strong animated entry that's worth checking out on Netflix, and one I feel like not enough people are talking about. I think dropping it on Netflix the same weekend as the big Marvel movie, more people are going to go out to the theaters and see the Marvel movie instead of seeing the animated movie that just dropped on Netflix. But it's still a really good movie, and I implore anyone who's a big animation fan, check it out on Netflix. I think you'll have a great time with it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be watching this one, and I'll also be watching The Gray Man. It's actually coming, even though it's a Netflix movie, my luxury theater in Daytona actually is showing it this weekend, so I will be going to see it.
Nice.
So I'm technically going to be seeing the movie early, so yay. But the CB sounds really good. I meant to see it this weekend, but other things just got in the way. But I will see it. I have it marked down that I am going to sit down and actually watch it. So be on the lookout for any of that. But anyway, what else you got? I see on your channel, I believe you got a Kubrick review up, if memory serves.
Yeah, it actually just dropped on the channel, my channel at the time of recording this, Killer's Kiss, which was actually Stanley Kubrick's second movie, which I gotta be honest, I wasn't a fan of. I didn't like his first movie either, Fear and Desire. We're at the part of his career where he's just making movies and learning how to, perfect his craft as he goes along. The story of Killer's Kiss is actually pretty interesting. We have this washed up boxer who falls in love with a dancer, but the dancer's employer is abusing her really bad, and he has to step in and protect her and save her pretty much. The movie itself is fine. The movie's actually shorter than most Kubrick movies. It's only like an hour and 7 minutes, so it doesn't overstay its welcome or anything. But the story was too simplistic for my liking. The acting was not really that impressive. There's some cool filmmaking in this movie that I do really respect. Like, for example, there's a boxing sequence which had some really cool close up and quick cuts that was actually pretty impressive and ahead of its time. I'm pretty sure Martin Scorsese probably took notes when he made Raging Bull, which I thought was pretty impressive. And there's a couple of other good standoff sequences between characters, but I didn't care for any of the characters. There's just some sequences that I just didn't really particularly care for. Like when we learn about the dancer's past, for some reason the movie flashes back to her dancing in a ballet recital as she's telling the audience the story. And it is one of the weirdest exposition dumps I've probably ever seen, because you have this ballet dancer doing her thing while the main character is telling a tragic story. And I just got zoned out because the dancer was such a distraction. I don't know what Kubrick was thinking there, but I don't think it's a good movie. But if you're a big Kubrick fan, I guess it's fun looking back to see what he did before making the great movies he did. But this is definitely not The Shining level Stanley Kubrick or anything like that.
Yeah, and this movie was made in 1955, and so we've got a bit of ways to go before Kubrick would get into like 2001 and even like Barry Lyndon. And I haven't seen it, but I've heard really good things about it. But when you were talking about the ballet scene, I'm saying to myself, wait, is the ballet dancer doing it while she's doing the dancing? Because I've taken ballet lessons, and you're focused on like your balance and your plies and your releves, and there's no time for talking. But I listened to you again, and like, oh, there was a narration over the dancing, and it was,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah, it was
weird
such a weird
flex from the sound
sequence.
of it. Weird flex from the sound of it.
Very weird.
Well, anyway, what else do you have?
Um, Actually, I think that was all I wanted to share. What have you been watching this week?
Well, like we said, I watched Ants back for the first time, and I do want to save that for when we do discussing DreamWorks weird stuff. And then saw Thor, but we're saving that for the discussion. And then I rewatched Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides, and this was a weird movie to go back and rewatch because after having the main trilogy fresh in my mind, I was like, wow, this is so disappointing. And it sucks because there was a director behind this, and Rob Marshall. This was no slouch. He was nominated for an Oscar for Chicago. He's done a lot of good movies in his. He's got a lot in his CV. It's clear that like they did it on actual locations. They got Ian McShane as the villain, Al Swearingen from Deadwood, among many other things. Like he was the proprietor of the Continental Hotel in the John Wick movies. Like that's Ian McShane. They got Penelope Cruz, who's won an Oscar. They got a lot of good talent behind the scenes. It just, like I said in my review, it looks like a Pirates of the Caribbean movie, it walks like a Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and it talks like a Pirates of the Caribbean movie. But it's weirdly kind of soulless. I don't know. I go into more detail in my review. I highly recommend you all check that out. But like Jacob, you were talking about how you think it's the worst Pirates of the Caribbean movie. I have not seen Dead Men Tell No Tales yet. I haven't rewatched that yet, but I am inclined to agree that On Stranger Tides is unfortunately just very disappointing.
Yeah, no, my main issue with On Stranger Tides is, there's some good action in there. Jack Sparrow still has some awesome moments. It's just boring. I don't care about the story with like the Fountain of Youth and Blackbeard and his daughter and like the romance that Jack goes on in this movie. And there's like this subplot with like the tear of a mermaid and the mermaid falls in love with the priest or whatever. And that was a weird addition to the movie that made no sense to me at all. I think some of the action wasn't bad. I liked Barbossa's role in this movie, even though it's weird that he's working for the British government now. That kind of seems against the fact that he was a pirate in the other movies. But then, they're setting up a revenge plot. It actually makes a lot of sense, and Jeffrey Rush is still pretty awesome in the role. So that aspect I can forgive when you realize where it's going. There's a couple good fight sequences. The opening's probably the best part with Jack and the interacting with like some of the British government or whatever. That was a fun sequence. But as soon as Penelope Cruz shows up, I feel like the movie's on autopilot, and just the rest of the movie just could not recover from that. The movie definitely needed the Gore Verbinski touch. Without him, these movies are just kind of empty, in my opinion.
Yeah, Gore Verbinski pretty much told the story he wanted to tell. He crossed the Rubicon and burned the bridge behind him. But the movies made so much money that Disney was like, let's collect the burnt wood, and try and reassemble the bridge. And it did not work. I'm not looking forward to rewatching Dead Men Tell No Tales because I remember one of my earliest videos on the channel. I did a trailer review for that first teaser trailer with Javier Bardem's reveal, and some of the worst CGI I've seen in a big budget movie. I was just so mad at it.
Oh,
I was just sitting there just like, Javier, how much money did they pay you to do this, buddy? But that's going to be interesting to watch again. But that's pretty much all that I have been watching lately. So I think this is as good a chance as any to parlay into Jessica Jones episode 2. And whoo, Nelly! This show is getting heavy. And keep in mind, everyone, Daredevil season 1 I had seen before, so I knew what to expect. After episode 1 of Jessica Jones, I'm just as blind as Jacob is. So we're going to this just like a shot in the dark just to see what ends up happening. And wow, there is just some heavy stuff involved in here, especially with the introduction of the main villain, Kilgrave. What say you, Jacob?
yeah, this had such dark stuff throughout this entire episode. Like, we off the bat, Kilgrave manipulated the girl that Jessica Jones was looking for into killing her parents. And everyone thinks she's really guilty of that when she was just manipulated into doing that. And, all the evidence is pointing to this character, yet Jessica knows what's really going on. And the woman and the girl in prison already is already given up. And at one point, even tells Jessica when she realized that Jessica was in a similar boat as she was, she's like, it'd be better if you killed yourself. I'm like, whoa, we're going there. This is some heavy stuff. I like her comeback response to that. Like, I would do that, but I'm the only one who knows you're innocent. So I like the snarky comebacks that she has throughout the course of the series. But then there's just some other weird stuff going on, like Jessica keeps shutting everybody out. She hears what sounds like a couple arguing upstairs, and she goes up and tells them, hey, knock it off, shut up, I'm trying to think. And so the whole time I was thinking, oh, that's just some couple bickering. And then later on, it's established that they're brother and sister. What?
That Metal Gear Solid noise of like, what? Like
what?
That happened when I was like, yo, like what is?
What is with these two?
Why am I hearing the Psycho theme all of a sudden?
Oh man.
Yeah, there's a lot to there's a lot to unpack with this show, and we're only 2 episodes in. I mean, I'm still in love with Kristen Ritter. I think she was a great choice as Jessica Jones. Mike Coulter is good as Luke Cage in the few scenes that he is in, especially that ending, which we do get like his first true scene as Luke Cage, where he just like takes that freaking table saw and is like, and like the saw does nothing, and it's just like, yep, you're definitely Luke Cage, all right. You're definitely Power Man.
And I love the scene with Luke and Jessica Jones who were taking down all those guys in the bar or whatever. That was actually a really good action scene, and we actually get to see, I guess, a more clear version of Jessica's power sets for the first time. Because in last week's episode, I was confused over Jessica's powers. I thought they felt kind of out of place in a dark and gritty show. But now actually seeing her powers, I'm like, okay, I think it'll fit. It's cool seeing her and Luke Cage kind of sort of team up in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love it. I love they're still kind of her relationship with her powers is like a break glass in case of emergency type of situation. She's not using it on the regular. She'd rather use this than this. I like that. I like the spirit of that.
Yeah, I do really like this character, and I'm really excited to see where the rest of the season goes. I'm a little cautious because there's some dark stuff already, so I'm treading on thin ice. But I'm still engaged, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
Yeah, and in the few scenes we do see of Kilgrave, I'm just like, I haven't even seen you and I already hate you. Because just keep in mind, this dude was pretty much dead. But then he had his kidneys replaced, and he stole 2 kidneys from the ambulance driver and then basically blackmailed a doctor to do surgery on them to like put them back in. And then the dude who took the kidneys from is on dialysis, and like that's a dark scene too, where Jesse Jones like goes to his house with like the very religious mother, and the dude just writes "kill me" on like a notepad, and I'm just like, this is not your mama's comic book show. That's
it is heavy stuff. And I was like, we got to that part and I'm like, how much darker is this show gonna get?
And then the final scene, Kilgrave just walks into this random ass house or apartment, and the husband's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "I'm a welcome guest." And like, "Come on in." And he manipulates the kids to go into the closet literally, and like he eats their dinner, and it just like, who is this person, and why do I hate you so much? Yeah, the show does a great job of, honestly, with Kingpin and Daredevil, and now this, the Netflix Marvel shows did such a great job of building up their villains to the point, and Kingpin was revealed much later in the series than Kilgrave. We see Kilgrave's shadow pretty much in episode 2, but and Kingpin wasn't revealed physically until a little later. But they do such a good job of building these people up as like the final boss in a video game, and no one wants to deal with them unless they have to. I think it's all just handled tremendously well.
Yeah, that's something I've noticed too, is that these Netflix Marvel villains, they don't mess around. Like, they will do whatever they can to mess you up, manipulate you, make you suffer if you stand in their way. And I respect the writing on these characters. I'm really excited to see more development.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to watching the rest of this show. Have you all seen Jessica Jones episode 2? Leave your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to read what you have to say. All right, Jacob, it's time for the main event of the evening. Thor Love and Thunder, Oh, the Things You Do to Me. So, preemptive notice of this is the spoiler-free section. I'll let you all know when the spoilers do come in to play. So, I already have a review of this movie on my channel if you all would like to check that out. So I will give the floor to Jacob. Jacob, please take it away.
Okay, Thor Love and Thunder. Where do I even begin on this movie?
Take all the time you need.
I love Taika Waititi as a director. Thor Ragnarok is still in my top 10 MCU films of all time. That is such a fantastic, especially blend in telling a weighty Thor story while also being overly bombastic and goofy at the same time. He blended that so well in that movie, and it was one of the breeziest films of the entire MCU and endlessly rewatchable too. I was so excited what he was going to do with Love and Thunder. And yeah, there's enjoyable parts in this movie. I thought that there were some fun action sequences, especially when we're on the black and white planet. That's all I'll say, non-spoiler section. That was a cool scene. I thought the performances were still really good. Chris Hemsworth is still a good Thor. Tessa Thompson, though underdeveloped in this movie compared to in the last movie, is still awesome as Valkyrie. I was skeptical at first on Natalie Portman being the mighty Thor. I was not sure how that was going to work, but I thought on the surface I did like seeing her as Lady Thor, and I actually did like her chemistry with Chris Hemsworth throughout the movie, and that was done for the most part very well, but I do have some frustrations with certain aspects of that as well. Christian Bale as Gore is phenomenal. Again, I wish we got more of him, but when we did get him, he is an amazing villain. I love seeing Christian Bale transform into a villainous character, and I thought the motivations were very clear, and I liked how overly creepy he got at times. I thought that was pretty well done. What hurts the movie, though, is I feel like there's two different movies that are at odds with each other. Like, you have some really dark, weighty stuff, like Gore's motivations on why he wants to take out all the gods, why Jane Foster wants to be Thor. There's those serious stuff, and yet the whole movie is sprinkled in some of the most ridiculous comedy imaginable, like Thor having like a love-hate relationship with his hammer and then his axe, which was a weird idea that the movie had. And you have this whole thing with Zeus, and this is in the trailer, but Zeus unveils Thor's disguise, and we see naked Thor for about 2 seconds, and people are going, ah, and those are passing out, and just some weird jokes that just kind of hijacked the seriousness of the story. Now, I laughed throughout the movie. Some of the jokes were fun. I liked Taika's style of humor. That's not the problem. It's just the humor and the serious story that you're setting up. Unlike in Ragnarok, where it's perfectly evenly balanced, here it's not balanced because the jokes are overdone to the point where I feel like it derails the seriousness of the story to where it just rang off as hollow by the end of the day. It's a movie where I had a decent enough time with, but it's definitely a step down from Ragnarok. I guess this is a disappointment of a Thor movie, but then I'm reminded Thor: The Dark World exists, which is one of my least favorite Marvel movies. Not a horrible movie, but it's one that I hardly ever rewatch because I find it a little boring and convoluted, hard to follow. At least Love and Thunder has a story you can follow, and it has a much better villain compared to The Dark World, but it's still a big step down compared to how awesome Ragnarok was.
It's definitely a big step down, and honestly, the humor in this movie just killed my enjoyment just on the whole, and I'll talk more in spoilers, but yeah, your point about two movies being at odds with each other, that just hit the nail on the head right there. I am low-key thirsting for a more serious Thor movie. Like Ragnarok, I thought that was actually quite funny. Like the humor that they had mixed in with the darker stuff, I thought that was very well done. And now that we've seen Thor in Infinity War and Endgame, we've seen him at literal physical and mental rock bottom. It's like it's now time to see him climb out of the abyss and try and reassert himself again. And I feel like the movie just had no interest in doing that whatsoever. And instead, like it building up like Valkyrie and the Mighty Thor, which I have no problem with. I like Tessa Thompson as an actress. I love her in the Creed movies. And Natalie Portman can be a very good actress too. She's won an Oscar, for goodness sake. Like she is no slouch. And I liked I like Jane Foster for the most part in this movie. However, the movie's called Thor Love and Thunder. And I feel like he was like the fifth or sixth most important thing in the movie. And generally speaking, he's treated like a goofball when he honestly, like, they should be going out of this phase. Instead, like, steering away from the skid, they turned into the skid. And now I can't take him seriously anymore, almost.
Yeah, there were some weird jokes, and I definitely get what you're saying. I thought his character arc in the movie was still pretty good at where they set him up till the end. But like you said, the serious stuff that they were setting up with all the characters and the jokes don't go well together. It's like there's two different movies rolled into one. And a part of me wished we got either one or two of these types of movies. Either make your goofy movie with the best of the goofy elements of this movie and make a fun little movie out of it, or get Kenneth Branagh back and try to do a more serious version of this story, and you can embrace like the Gore the God Butcher stuff and some of the weightiness of Jane Foster and make that much more impactful than the version we already got. I can see two really good movies out of the movie we got. Unfortunately, too serious and too jokey just do not mesh well together, and it's a big mess at the end of the day.
You know, I joked on my official tweet review that Christian Bale must have needed to see a chiropractor because he carried this whole movie on his back, and that has not that has not dimmed in my mind. The dude literally, when he is on screen, he carries everything that he is given. He takes the ball and he runs it and he spikes it in the end zone. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is the beginning where we see Gore in his human form and his and everything that happens there, and he sees his god, and his god is just like, I'm not gonna do anything for you, and just that whole thing. I felt such sympathy for him, and it just, you understand everything that Gore is going through, like every decision that he makes. You don't like the methodology, but at the same time, there's a pang of he's got a point, you know.
Yeah, and that's what I really love about the best of the Marvel villains is they do terrible acts against other people, but you buy their motivations and you see where they're coming from. And sometimes you feel sympathy for the villains. And other good examples of that, some aspects of Thanos, where he plans to wipe out the population, with the snap of his fingers by grabbing all the Infinity Stones. You're like, why would you want to feel sympathy for a guy like that? and then when you listen to his motivations, how he lost his entire planet because nobody listened to his methods, and even some of the lengths he goes to get all the stones, even sacrificing his favorite daughter to get to that. You're like, ooh, man. I felt a little bit of pain there. I don't agree with your methods, but I felt a little bit of pain there. And I love it when the Marvel villains have these complex motivations to where you can see where they're coming from while you still absolutely hate what they're doing at the same time.
Another great example is Killmonger from Black Panther. I mean,
Yes, that's a good one.
his motivation is incredibly clear, and honestly, he's almost like he's borderline like the hero of that story. No offense to T'Challa, because he is clearly the hero, but you understand just how he was born into a rough situation with his father is who has a connection to Wakanda, and that connection was cut off. And so Killmonger's just like, all right, I'm going to force my way in. And so he does. It's like I said, you don't agree with the methods, but again, you also have to give it to him from a certain point of view, they are right. And so I think Gore definitely fits into that category. Gore, Thanos, Killmonger. I would agree Ultron to a certain degree. I know that's going to be a super unpopular opinion, but I will stand by that. I think Ultron, like I said, I've said that he's a very underrated villain for quite some time, and I will stand by that. But that's just off the top of my head.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I did see a funny meme related to Christian Bale as Gore, and they took a picture of Christian Bale, and the caption said, Christian Bale. And then they showed a picture of Christian Bale as Gore the God Butcher, and it said of Christian Bale, they call him Atheist Bale.
Yes, I've seen that meme. It is hilarious.
It is.
I can't think of it as like, oh, there's Atheist Bale. That's a gold star to whoever created that. Can of Coke to him. But yeah, I think this is a logical place to go into spoilers, unless Jacob, you can think of something else.
Not off the top of my head.
All right, well, here is your official spoiler warning to all of you watching. If you have not seen Thor: Love and Thunder and want to go see it, skip forward to our final thank yous for watching and all of that. The time code will be here, and it will be in the description. Click away. This is the spoiler-free. This is the spoiler-filled section. The movie's going to be spoiled for you starting right now. So, actually, one of the things that actually could have potentially been interesting is, and this is a weird place to start, I know, but it's been in my head. Valkyrie is kind of underused here because she's the king of New Asgard, and so she runs the thing, and she's basically turned it into a tourist trap. She opens an ice cream shop called Infinity Cones, and I said in my review, it's a very solid name for an ice cream shop. But then I believe I saw on Twitter from the Flick Pick, who I used to watch all the time, but he had a good point where he said, hey, this ice cream store is named after Thanos, the guy who wiped out half of the galaxy. And it's like you named an ice cream store after him. It's a weird idea. And it's like having Hellraiser open up an acupuncture place. It's just like, really? It's just so, like I said, we were talking about the humor in this is just so freaking weird. There's a couple of cancer jokes because, well, Jane Foster has cancer in this movie and it ultimately claims her life. But there are some cancer jokes in this movie where I'm just sitting there like, no. And like, I'm not the type of person who is like, oh, humor's bad, we cancel, and all that stuff. I think in the right context and with a good amount of taste, you can make fun of pretty much anything. However, I don't think these were particularly tasteful. And if I'm a prude for saying that, then I will own being a prude. But that's just my standing on it.
Yeah, it was really weird too when they set up the whole Jane Foster has cancer, and she just kind of like brushed it off. I'm like, oh, I got stage 4, and that's nothing. That's the or something like that. I forgot what the joke was now. And I was just sitting there thinking, this is a serious subject matter. This just seemed like a weird time to throw in a forced joke like that. And there were a couple other moments too where Thor and Jane, who's Thor at this moment, they're on the boat and they're talking, and Jane makes the realization, or she tells Thor that finally tells him that she has cancer. And then afterwards, like, oh no, I don't have cancer. What am I talking about? I'm like, you just kind of ruined the seriousness of the conversation with that forced joke. That just moments like that just, while there's funny stuff in this whole movie, when you try to force a joke in a serious moment, it just took me out of it. Some of those, it just seemed like the humor and the weighty story just were just not compatible throughout the whole movie, that it became a distraction. And then my other issue with Jane Foster throughout the whole movie, I have, when I saw the movie, I have no problem with her being Mighty Thor. When she was on screen, it was a lot of fun. The way it built up to it, though, made no sense to me at all. Like, in like the first 10 minutes, she reads a book and it says Mjolnir has healing powers. And so in the span of just minutes of screen time, she goes to New Asgard where the pieces of the hammer is, touches it, and just becomes Thor instantly. Now that was something that was hard buying, in my opinion, because, you know, Thor had his own movie where he had to be worthy of picking up Mjolnir, and Jane Foster just does it in like 10 minutes of screen time, and I'm like, this needed better fleshing out. I think there's a longer movie of of Thor: Love and Thunder in here somewhere where there's better development of characters, or just make a movie where you develop Jane's origins in one movie, and I think it would have bought her as Lady Thor that much more. There were just some weird story directions in this movie that just, it was weird. I don't fully understand where Taika was going with some of these story decisions.
Yeah, in the first Thor literally can't pick up his hammer in one scene. Like, it's stuck in the New Mexico desert and it's raining, and you see Hawkeye's first appearance. Hi, Hawkeye. He's up there, and he's trying to get it up and he can't, and he's just like, he's not worthy yet. And then when he finally becomes worthy, you're just like, yes, that's so good. Apparently all you need is cancer to become worthy. That'll do the trick. You're just like, oh my goodness. I don't know. It just very, very, very weird stuff. And I don't want to say like, oh, Taika Waititi is a bad director now. Like, not even close. No. The dude has made so much quality that I will still say he does have a bit of the Midas touch about it. It's been dented slightly, but he definitely has the Midas touch about him. However, just like I said, just some of the choices he makes, like everything involving Zeus. Let's talk about the Zeus stuff, shall we? I mean, I saw a tweet before we went on to record this that said Russell Crowe in Thor: Love and Thunder. There were two pictures, one of Tommy Wiseau from The Room and one of Jeff Bridges as the Big Lebowski. And I'm like, this is it. I can't see Zeus I can see Russell Crowe as Zeus. I can only see him going like, oh, hi, Thor, or like something dumb like that. Because that's exactly what it was. You could have edited Thor out of the movie wholeheartedly, and it would have been no different. He's only there to like set up seemingly Thor 5, where we're going to be getting Hercules, which is going to be an interesting thing that they're going to do, seemingly. But I don't know. Like, his involvement just, I guess there was just a need to pigeonhole this to where we would eventually see Chris Hemsworth's butt. Potential. I mean, that's the only way I can explain that whole sequence.
That was an interesting sequence because I don't.
He's in chains. He's in chains.
Let us take off your disguise.
And he flicks it, and he's in his full glory, and he's like, "Damn it, you flick too hard!" And every girl there is like,
passing out.
And I'm just sitting there like, What kind of genjutsu am I in right now? The whole thing was just so random.
It that is actually strangely enough, that was one of the comedic scenes that strangely worked for me. Is juvenile as that got, whatever Russell Crowe was on and his weird accent. I don't know what Russell Crowe was doing as playing Zeus. I was confused over his old accent. For some reason, he started talking to Thor like Mario. For some reason, like, "Ooh, here, let me take off your disguise. It's me, Zeusio."
Do. I said in my
Chris
review.
Pratt is sitting somewhere like, "Oh, I'm gonna take notes when I voice Mario in the Illumination movie."
He's ironically in this movie, so he definitely probably was taking notes. But then he literally, I said in my review that he was basically speaking Portuguese from Waterworld, and I was like, it makes too much sense. It makes too much sense.
Um, it, I mean, it was a weird sequence. To me, it was just a random sequence that probably didn't need to be there. But strangely, it was one of the goofier sequences that I kind of had a fun time with at the same time. Like when Taika's forcing humor, it doesn't work. But when he embraces the goofy, those sequences got some of the biggest laughs between that and then the opening with the Guardians. I thought that sequence was a load of fun too, when Thor's doing all the jump kicks and the split kicks, and he's doing that big epic speech, and he's running, and Guns N' Roses is playing, and he accidentally destroys a temple at the same time. Those were some of the best goofy moments of the movie that I actually did enjoy. It's just the whole movie just does not gel together. The individual stuff's good, but the movie does not work together, and it's sad.
Yeah, and on a bit of another note, I don't want to sound too much like Cody Leach, but Taika, there are other bands besides Guns N' Roses, you know. I was just sitting there, I'm like, you got all four of their most popular songs in this movie. At least with Guardians of the Galaxy movies, it introduced me to bands that I had no idea even existed. Like I got into Redbone, I got into because they did Come and Get Your Love. They did ELO, which is one of my personal favorite bands in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. They did Mr. Blue Sky. That was a lot of fun to have. At least they didn't do I was kind of thinking, you know, Taika would probably do like Fortunate Son or something like that, one of the most predictable, or Give Me Shelter. I'm sure that was free that time, but they didn't. But I don't know, weird side road, but
Yeah.
it like you said, the individual parts are really good, and I said that the first 2/3 of this movie were a slog to get through, but literally from Gore versus Team Thor on Gore's planet, where it's like the color is saturated out to where it's basically black and white, all the way up to the end. That last third was honestly really good stuff. And if it had been more of that and less of the cancer jokes and ice cream stores named after people who wipe out half the galaxy, then that would have been an excellent Thor movie. But instead, it's like you got one movie here and one movie here. It's just doing this for 2 hours. And it's painful to notice just how one side wants to do one thing and one side wants to do another. And it just basically just goes bleh, and it is like just splatters all over the canvas.
Yeah, and you bring up interesting parts about the third act. The third act, I like a lot of aspects of the third act. When they're on Gore's planet, that action scene was awesome. I love the black and white cinematography and the dreariness of Gore's world, and seeing Thor, Valkyrie, and Jane try to take him on, but they're no match for him because they're on his turf. And he's, messing with their minds and diving into the philosophical questions of, the power of gods and stuff. That was an excellent sequence, and Christian Bale was probably at his peak in that moment. I wish that was the final battle of the movie, honestly. I wish that was the big third act. But no, we got an extra 20 minutes. Thor tries to go on his own. He rescues, because there's children in New Asgard that got abducted. And he takes Zeus's lightning bolt that he took from Zeus and transfers his powers to Heimdall's son and all the other kids. And so they're going around jumping and shooting lightning, and taking out these shadow demons. That took me out of the movie fast. That was the part of the movie that felt like it turned into full-blown parody mode. And that was the part of the movie where it completely lost me. I didn't feel like I was watching Thor anymore. I just felt like I was watching, some of Robert Rodriguez's like bizarre family movies, like the Spy Kids and the Shark Boy and Lava Girl, those types of movies where like the kids are like overly superpowered and they take down like big grown-ups who probably should have taken them out minutes ago, but the kids are superpowered and the parents are idiots. I just stopped taking the movie seriously after that. And you know what's sad? There's good stuff in this climax, like Jane Foster, who's, even with Mjolnir, still dying of cancer, and she makes the sacrifice at the end to still save the day, despite the fact that, she's dying, and, she could have easily just laid there to save her life. But no, I'm going to be Thor one last time and sacrifice myself to save the day. There's some touching stuff in that. And then what happens with Gore, and, Thor talks Gore into, making his final act out of love instead of vengeance. And instead of praying to the eternity god or whatever that was to wipe out all the other gods, he instead pleads to bring his daughter back, to take his life to bring his daughter back. And there's some compelling stuff in there. It's just, when you follow that up with super powered kids with Thor's powers at Ring Hollow, and I like the stuff, it just does not reach the emotional impact that I think they were going for. And so I'm at like a weird flex with this movie the more I'm thinking about it. I like the individual stuff in this movie, but this is like one of the weirdest Marvel movies I think I've ever seen. Before we're talking about it, I'm surprised by some of the decisions in this movie. Like, there's even a thing where Stormbreaker is jealous of Thor because
Oh
Thor
God,
is
that was so
budding
bad.
with Miri.
I was literally, that took me out of the movie. I was sitting there like, this man is a god, like an actual god, and he's sitting there playing Dr. Phil between a hammer and an axe. I was sitting there like, Thor, Stormbreaker is an upgrade. It's bigger. It can summon it killed Thanos. Literally, read the room. You got a hammer and you got an axe that's about as big as you are. It's like, reconsider your options here. Mjolnir was fine while it lasted. Pass it on to someone else and use Stormbreaker as your primary weapon. But no, it makes it even worse, considering that in some scenes, like, Stormbreaker just like eases into frame and is like, "Who are you talking to?" And Thor's like, "Oh, I was just talking to the thing," and I was just like, "The God of Thunder, everyone," just trying to hide his consensual talks with his ex significant other. And when do these things have feelings? And I just don't know. I feel like my brain is breaking just me talking about this right now, and I just don't know what to say anymore.
Yeah, that was a weird direction to go. But the superpowered kids is what turned me off of the movie. I'm like, what are you doing?
I could at least buy it because at least when he gave them, he was like, temporarily the power of Thor. So it was like, it's all going to go back and it'll be fine. I could at least take some solace in that, I guess. With just this, with just the the guy who killed Thanos trying to play peacemaker between his two exes. I was just sitting there like, this is the MCU now. A love triangle between a god, a hammer, and an axe. What are we doing? Are we in like the parody phase of this series? Can we actually get a bit more serious now? I don't know. I'm sick of talking about this, to be honest.
All right. What do you think of the end where Thor is raising Gore's child now?
I actually didn't mind that. I thought that was nice, and that's actually if what I saw on social media is correct, that's actually Chris Hemsworth's actual daughter.
Oh wow!
If I am correct, don't quote me on that. I saw it somewhere on social media that said, "Oh, by the way, that's Chris Hemsworth's actual daughter." I'm like, "Oh,
That makes it a lot sweeter.
that's actually kind of cool." So, no, so at the end of the day, I feel like Thor: Love and Thunder is too weird to live and too rare to die. Like we've established, it's two competing ideas, kind of dark and kind of lighthearted, and usually it works, but in this context, it really, really didn't. Uh, um, I said in my review I would honestly watch Thor: The Dark World over this, and I know that's a very unpopular opinion, but I will stand by that. At least Thor: The Dark World had at least a bit more of a consistent tone, and it had actually fun sequences. This just felt like a slog for 2/3, and then the last third was actually quite good. Anyway, Jacob, anything else you got to say?
For me, the Dark World. For me, the first 2/3 of that movie were a slog to sit through with like the whole Malekith stuff and like the confusion over the Infinity Stone and what the actual purpose of that is, and like the love story with Thor and Jane does not work in that movie for me. But when Thor and Loki are teaming up, that's when the movie actually picks up. Here, there's good stuff, I feel like, through and through, even if the tones don't work. I like some of the individual stuff. And this movie has a much better villain. And that's why I think Love and Thunder to me is more watchable than The Dark World, at least. But it's so frustrating when you have a director who made an amazing movie like Ragnarok and then followed that up with a movie that's more subpar in comparison with two competing tones that don't really flow together. I still respect Taika Waititi even after this movie because I love what he did with Ragnarok. Jojo Rabbit's a fantastic movie, and if you haven't seen Hunt for the Wilder People, that is such an awesome indie comedy he did. That was my introduction to Taika Waititi. Came out a year before Ragnarok did. That one's worth checking out, but I'm still rooting for Taika to make awesome movies. Like, I'm really intrigued what he's going to do because I think he's supposed to make a Star Wars movie, and I think he'll do good if given the right material. Every director has to have at least a subpar film or a misfire film at least some point in their lives, and I guess this is that movie for Taika Waititi. Don't throw him under the bus just because of this movie. He's still an awesome director. It just some directors have to like make a misfire every once in a while and then get their A game back. It just happens sometimes in the business.
Yeah, I agree. And I gave the movie a good rating because, like I said, the things that I did like were really good to the point where I couldn't go any lower than that. However, I felt like I was just being very, very generous as a whole. But I was just looking up what the MCU has left for the rest of this year. And by my count, it looks like they got Miss Marvel going on, which I haven't even begun to start, but I have heard good things. We got She-Hulk Attorney at Law, which is going to be starting, I believe, at the end of this month, if memory serves.
I think it's coming in August, I think.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. And then we've also got Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which hasn't even had a trailer out yet, which, I mean, there's still time. It's coming out in November, and we're in just about mid-July, so there is still time. However, considering with the unfortunate death of Chadwick Boseman, it's going to be weird to see how they tackle that. But once we get a trailer, I think we can accurately judge that. And I think it's going to be a weird time for the MCU going forward. And I can talk about my disappointment with this phase so far, but I think that's a discussion for another time. I think we'll close things off here. But what did you all think of Thor: Love and Thunder? Leave your thoughts in the comments. We would love to read what you all would have to say about that. Well, that is all for us. That's another episode in the books. Thank you all so much, as always, for watching. Jacob, it is a privilege and a pleasure, as always. Where can people find you, good sir?
They can find me on Letterboxd, Twitter, and Facebook, and you can also subscribe to my 2 YouTube channels. My second channel is Storytime with Jacob, and that's where I do book reviews and read-alongs. I'm at the tail end of finishing up Prince Caspian, the second book in the Chronicles of Narnia series. That's been a great reread, as I haven't read the book since I was a kid. And then on my main channel is where I do movie reviews, TV reviews, ranking videos, and all that fun stuff. Like what me and Ryan have brought up earlier in the podcast, are discussing DreamWorks live podcast video on Ants will be Thursday night at 8 p.m. Be on the lookout for that. Definitely share your comments. Let's talk about Ants. Talk about how weird that movie is. I'm excited to talk with Ryan on DreamWorks' first animated movie and our monthly podcast we're doing. And you can check out some of my other videos that I've got coming on the channel this week. I've got some Downton Abbey videos. I've covered Stanley Kubrick's film Killer's Kiss. I recently reviewed Alfred Hitchcock's Young and Innocent, which I didn't bring it up earlier. And that was a weird movie. Definitely not one of Hitchcock's best. I got a review coming up for Smurfs: The Lost Village. And then an upcoming video coming this weekend for my Superhero Saturdays. I'll be covering Daredevil Season 1 if you want to hear my full thoughts on my own channel where I talk about Daredevil. Just one full video. Definitely check that video when it drops this Saturday. Some exciting stuff coming on the channel this week. And definitely go like and subscribe if you haven't already.
Yes, both of his channels and his Twitter will be linked in the description. Please go check him out. And like I said, do check out Discussing DreamWorks. I'm looking forward to it immensely. But as for me and this channel goes, like I said, Fifth Dimension Podcast, I was a guest on there recently. Go check it out on the Movie Emporium channel. I actually just got confirmation that my match against Alyssa from Mainly Movies for Top Notch Trivia is this Saturday night at 6 p.m. Eastern. So nice. 6 p.m. Eastern, wherever you are in the U.S. or around the world. Just gauge it from there, but that's going to be over on Ryan O'Toole's channel. I would love the support on that. It's a first round match in a tournament, so I'm praying to win, and I am feeling pretty confident. But I was in the romance trivia with Alyssa, and she actually knew a good deal of things about romance, so it can really go either way. So please do check it out for that. It's actually going to be a doubleheader. The match before us is going to be Dibes from the Suit Up Geeks podcast going up against Hannah from Rejected Hannah on Twitter and her YouTube channel. So please check out that match and check out my match if you do feel so inclined. And then, like I said, announcement regarding another trivia league that I am not ready to announce just yet. I will be letting you all in very soon. But as for this channel that you are probably watching this right now, I dropped a Twilight Zone vlog for the episode called Static. Do check that out. And then I will be covering, there's a lot of movies coming out this weekend. I'm going to try and at least cover Paws of Fury, just for morbid curiosity, and The Gray Man, which, like I said, is coming to my luxury theater a week early before it drops on Netflix. So expect reviews for at least those. And then Sunday will be my review for Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales. So look forward to all of that. But until next time, that's Jacob Martin. My name is Ryan Cam. Thank you all so much for watching. We will see you in the next one. Please take care.